Hello all. Hope everyone's staying healthy as we're coming out of this quarantine now. We're still quarantined, but we're coming out of it, and I hope you are getting a chance to go see some, family or friends, or seen some people go get haircuts, and so that's good. And just wanted to come on here again today and do another quick idea from the book of Daniel. This time from Daniel chapter 3. And what this chapter is really about is standing up for what you believe in, even if there are consequences, because God is with us in those consequences. And we see that today. We go through hard times, and I've heard of situations where people pray in public and they say in Jesus' name and it's criticized, and they still do it because that's what they believe. But sometimes it's not necessarily like a direct punishment. Sometimes it's more people keeping you at arm's distance because you're Christian, you do right, and you're not involved in some of the things because people feel they can't relate to you. Sometimes that happens. So there are consequences for doing the right thing, but it is worth it because God's with us through those circumstances. If we look at Daniel chapter 3, what's happening in this chapter is that Daniel's still in Babylon, but he has three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and those guys are really what this chapter is about. So the king Nebuchadnezzar, he built a statue and he plays this music, and when the music starts, everyone's supposed to bow down to the statue. So what happens is the king starts the music, and these three guys do not bow down, and so someone turns them in and says, these guys didn't bow down to the statue. What are we going to do with them? So the king gets really angry, and he decides he's going to put them into a fiery furnace for not bowing down to the statue. And he's so angry, in fact, that he heats it 7 times more than what's normal. So he's going to throw them in. So he ends up doing it. He gives them a chance, though, to recant. And he says, if you guys will bow down now, we'll let this all go. Will be water under the bridge. But they knew in their Bible it says, serve no other gods before me. So they chose, what they said to him was, we're still not going to bow, and even if you punish us, we believe God will deliver us from your punishment, but even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow down to your statue. And so he gets really angry, the king does, and he throws them in to the furnace that's 7 times hotter. So they throw him in, but instead of burning up, what happens is there are 3 guys in there, but then the king sees a 4th guy who he says looks like the son of man, or son of the gods, and they're all 4 in there together. And the king's astonished because he has no context for this. What is happening? So he calls them back out, and when they walk out, it's those 3 guys again, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, but they don't have their tied hands any longer. They're free, but their clothes are unsinged, their hair's unsinged, they don't smell like smoke, completely unaffected. So the king's floored by this, and he says, you were right for not following my gods. Your God is able to deliver you. So he says no one criticized their God, and he promotes them. So they went through a difficult situation because they chose to do the right thing, and they could have recanted. They could have said, no, I take it back, but they didn't. They chose to proceed and take the consequences, and God was with them in the consequences. We can learn from that today because, difficult things still happen for us today. And we can even learn from church history. So there's an example of this man named Martin Luther who started this Protestant Reformation, and he criticized the church and says we need to reform in these ways, but the church didn't like that, and they were going to punish him. So they called him before the Diet of Worms. It was the Holy Roman Empire. So you have the emperor there, you have the Pope together saying, Martin Luther, you take this back or it's going to be really bad for you. They can make life really bad for you. And he said, I'm going to stick with what I believe. And I have said, he criticized the church. He says, I stand by that. And I believe that God help me. And he continued on with it. And it would have been easier for him to recant, and life would have been probably a little bit easier for him, but he chose not to, and God was with him. So we can see from the Bible that God was with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. God was with Martin Luther throughout the Protestant Reformation, and God's with us today. When we go through things, we choose to do the right thing, and we choose to stick by that and not go back, and not, compromise what we believe, God's with us through all of that. And so I hope that is encouraging to you today, and stay healthy out there, and I will see you next time.